how to know if your baby's moving enough at the end of pregnancy. Hey moms, I'm Dr. Shaunna Mason, a board-certified OBGYN practicing here in Houston, Texas, motivated to help all you pregnant mamas out there get ready to have your baby and recover postpartum. So let's talk about baby's movements at the end of pregnancy. So we're getting close to your due date. You're seeing your doctor every single week, most likely now, and each week she's going to ask you, how's the baby moving? And it's really something you need to give some thought to every single day. So around the third trimester, our babies kind of get into patterns as to how they move. So you may notice your baby moves a whole lot when you lay down at night and sort of try to get comfortable, or your baby moves a whole lot after you eat or when you're driving. And what we notice about these things is that's when we are more still, more aware of their movements. We also think about kind of jostling our babies in and out of sleep cycles, right? So when we're up and active and busy throughout the day, we're getting our babies into sleep cycles and they may quiet down a little bit. Then when we get in our car, we sit down for lunch, we lay down at night, we are not moving as much. And so that may allow them to kind of wake up and start wiggling around, right? So that may be the connection that we see in some of those patterns of movements with our babies. But it's really important to know how much your baby should move. Now, every baby is different, but there are a few standards and a few tests that you can do as a mom anytime you might be concerned that baby isn't moving that well. So let's go over those. So the most important thing is that even though you are nearing your due date, you are getting towards the end of pregnancy, your baby may be really big or close to their newborn size, they should not stop moving. And I think this is a really common misconception that I hear a lot in the office, and we definitely want to clarify, is that even though your baby's maybe running out of space, as some moms describe it, the frequency of their movement really shouldn't change. Now, the quality of their movement, or how you see the movement or feel the movement, may actually change. And let's go over that real quick. So as babies start to run out of space, or they get to head down and they're kind of set in their position, they're not doing those big rolls or turns as much anymore, they do have limited space for extending their arms and legs as much as they used to. So you are right that you may not feel as strong of movements as often anymore, but you really shouldn't feel less movement. And let's talk about that. So movement should stay about the same in frequency, even up to delivery. So even up to when your contractions start, babies should continue to move with pretty good frequency. But it may be more subtle movements, things like stretches or rolls or hiccups or turns, right? And sometimes, because we're busy and we're moving around, or we've really gotten used to some of these small movements, we may not realize that our babies are really moving. So here's a way that you can monitor the baby's movements, and this is known as kick counts. And kick counts are a way for us to test your baby at home to give you reassurance that your baby is still happy and active and doing very well inside. So kick counts are where you actually sit down and pay attention to the baby's movement. So you're not working, you're not cleaning, you're not busying yourself. One being you're not moving very much, right? Because we know that can jostle a baby right on into another sleep cycle. But your movement is slowed down, and your full attention is given to monitoring this baby's movement. So grab yourself a big glass of water, get a snack, turn the TV on, or read something that isn't going to be too distracting, and start counting your baby's movements. And a healthy, active, non-stressed baby is going to move 10 times within 2 hours. So many moms start to do a kick count test on their babies, and they sit down, they get their water, they open up their book, and they get to 10 movements in, 2 minutes, right? Other moms, it can take a while. And that's because our babies go through sleep cycles, just like we have sleep cycles. We fall into sleep, initially a light sleep, then we get into a deeper sleep and our dream state, and then we wake up again, right? And we have a lighter sleep towards the end. Babies do very similar sleep cycles in utero, and those we think last anywhere from 30 to 90 minutes. So we give the baby 2 hours to get to those 10 movements, and that's because when you first start monitoring or testing them at home, they may be in one of those sleep cycles. But by that second hour, you should be easily able to get to 10 movements in that last bit of your monitoring. I have dropped a link below. That's actually a kick count website where you can actually download their kick count counter. And we want you to actually count these movements, right? That is your test to know if your baby is happy and active and doing very well at home. And remember, any movement counts, right? Stretches and rolls and shifts and turns, all of those are good movements. And then of course, those really strong, kicks and punches, those give us tons of reassurance, right? So these are ways that you can continue to monitor your baby as you near your due date, especially if you feel like their movement is starting to slow down, become a little sluggish, if you feel like they're running out of space, so you're not really sure if their movement is still the same. But honestly, at any point in your third trimester, it would be very reasonable to start monitoring your baby's movements. We put a lot of trust in you knowing your baby best. So if you come to us and tell us, I'm not feeling my baby move as much, there are some things your doctor can order to try to give us more information about why you may be feeling this, right? But what you can do at home are these kick counts. Anytime you want, you can test your baby and make sure they're happy and active and doing all the things we need to do in there. So if you start to feel like overall your baby is just moving a lot slower, you've tried these kick counts and maybe you're still getting to 10, but it just feels different. It's definitely important to let your doctor know. And one of the things we can order is an ultrasound called a biophysical profile. And I've described that down below so you can, keep it as a reference point. But what this ultrasound looks at are things that give us reassurance that babies are not undergoing any stress in utero. And this is things like making sure the baby's in the right position. Number one, breech babies, sometimes we don't feel as much. So their bottoms are down, and their legs are pointed back towards our back. We just don't feel their movements as strongly. They're much more muted or less, we can perceive. So it's important to make sure that your baby hasn't turned positions on us, to make sure there's enough fluid around your baby or enough cushion, or think about being in the swimming pool, right? It's harder to move when you're in the shallow baby pool, but it's really easy to move when you're in the deep end and do flips and turns and all these things. The same is true for our babies inside. So if the fluid around your baby is getting to be too low, that may limit some of their movement and they slow down. So we want to check that. And then we check other things that are normal for happy, not stressed babies. So things like practicing breathing, practicing big movements like extending their arms and legs or opening and closing their hands, and then little movements. How tight are they? Are they kind of all relaxed, or is their tone really good? They're kind of balled up. You think about seeing newborns kind of like they keep their arms and legs tight into their bodies, and we can see those too on ultrasound. So your baby will actually get a score on that ultrasound, and some doctors even actually can measure the baby's heartbeat in the office, so we can make sure we're seeing happy jump ups, or we call those accelerations on the baby's heartbeat, and that tells us babies are doing really well in there. So if you have the baby's heartbeat, the score will be 10 out of 10. If you don't do the baby's heartbeat, the score is out of 8, and we give the baby 2 points for every part that they are doing. So there are times when that score drops below a certain level that gives us an indication that maybe your baby isn't thriving inside anymore, and that can sometimes warrant more investigation, monitoring, or observation in the hospital, or sometimes if we're getting close to full term or even closer past your due date, it can be a reason to need to be induced. Again, knowing your baby, feeling confident as a mom to reach out if something doesn't feel right, if your baby isn't moving, would allow us to do some more investigation or move forward with delivery so that we can eliminate really, really bad complications like cord accidents, or the baby getting too tangled in their umbilical cord. That can sometimes lead to stillbirth, or the fluid dropping too low, where the babies can accidentally obstruct their umbilical cords, and that compromises the blood flow between you and the baby. So it's not a bad thing to monitor and check and test your baby as you get near your due date. And it's definitely not a bad thing to reach out to your doctor or go to your hospital if you feel like there is a big change in your baby's movements. It's always good to get reassuring information, right? So worst case scenario, you go in and everything's great and your baby's happy and active and the ultrasound looks great and you get to go home and wait for labor to start on its own. But at the worst case, we could maybe find what is stressing your baby and intervene and keep you and your baby healthy all the way to the end. So lots of doctors recommend you start doing kick counts around 28 or 30 weeks, where you just spot check your baby as often as you need to. If you would tell a stranger on the street, my baby's happy and active, you probably don't need to be doing kick counts. Your baby's just giving you plenty of reassurance. But if you're one of those moms, maybe you have an anterior placenta, maybe you have a breech baby, and you're just not quite feeling like your baby is all that active, then kick counts can be a very valuable test to give you that peace of mind. And remember, it's 10 movements. Any movements count within 2 hours, so that we can bypass that long 90-minute sleep cycle and make sure your baby wakes up and is happy and active. It's also a good idea to have a snack or have some ice water. These temperature changes can sometimes perk up babies, so maybe you don't have to wait the whole 2 hours to get them to move and wiggle. But the most important thing is that you sit down and pay attention to the movements. We want to slow your activity down, and we want this to be your focus, because it's so easy to get used to these baby small movements now that you've been feeling them probably for the last 10, 15, even 20 weeks. And so by giving it your full attention, that can really allow you to see, yes, my baby is happy and active and so wiggly in there, or my baby really isn't as active as they used to be. This is a big change. I can't get to 10 movements, or the movements are just very subtle, very sluggish, and they just aren't giving me peace of mind. Then you definitely want to call your doctor. You want to go to your hospital immediately, so that we can figure out what might be giving this baby a little bit of stress. So I hope you loved this video. I hope it was really helpful in understanding how babies' movements can change towards the end of pregnancy, and how you can do tests as a confident mom to make sure your baby is still thriving in there. Creating a birth plan is another way you can really feel very prepared for labor, and I have built a free birth plan and companion guide video to take you through all the things you may not even know to include on there, and I have linked that below. I would love for you to download it and give me some feedback on what you think is helpful or what you think needs to be added. And check back every Friday. I'm going to be here providing more videos for us to keep learning together.